What is going on, y'all? Robert Sykes, KetoSavage.com, coming back at you with another AMA Ask Me Anything episode. This one is brought to us by Goran, I believe that's how you pronounce it, and he's got a question regarding macro distributions with the primary goal of fat loss. But before we dive into that, let's roll the intro. All right, so his question is, I'm at 30% body fat according to my Dexa scan. My main goal is to keep muscle and burn fat. My RMR, so resting metabolic rate, is 1,834 calories. Do I still need a 75% fat, 20% protein, and 5% carbs for my daily macros? Or because I'm obese, do I lower my fat consumption and raise protein? Okay, so I'm assuming you're coming at this 75-25 split because that's what everybody thinks of when they think of keto. I don't really ever recommend kind of having a set macro distribution and just sticking with that. When I'm working with clients one-on-one, I start them at a high fat ratio and then I'm constantly changing their intake of both protein and dietary fat so that their macro distribution and percentages is constantly changing depending on where their composition is and how long they've been in a fat loss phase or muscle building phase. So I don't really recommend doing the stereotypical 75-25 and just keeping that steady. What I typically recommend doing, even if you have a lot of body fat to lose, is to start at the higher fat ratio. I start my clients at about 80% of their calories coming from fat. Again, that's even if you have a lot of body fat to lose. Doing so upregulates all of your body's metabolic pathways to streamline fat efficiency and to just improve how efficient your body is able to metabolize fat as the primary fuel substrate, both dietary fat and stored body fat. So many people make the mistake of going from a standard American diet to a high protein version of keto because they think, hey, I've got a lot of body fat to lose. I'm not going to give myself any dietary fat so that it can just automatically tap into my stored fat. And while that seems like it would make sense, that's not really how things play out in reality, because what happens more often than not is because they've removed the carbs as a fuel source and their body is not yet effective at using their stored fat, they have no energy source. They feel miserable. It's not sustainable. They deviate and they go off track and then they're back at square one or worse. So regardless of how much body fat you have to lose, I would still recommend starting at a higher fat ratio, upregulate all of those metabolic pathways, get more efficient, more effective at using fat as an energy source. And then as you do that, you can slowly start to titrate your protein up and your dietary fat down to find your own unique protein threshold. All the while doing that will result in a decrease in overall calories, so you lose, body fat via that approach. As far as your RMR goes, 1834, don't start at that caloric intake. A lot of people think, okay, I've done a BMR, I've done RMR, it says 1,800 calories, I'm going to start at that caloric intake. I do not recommend that. Start at your true maintenance intake or slightly below that, and the way you find your true maintenance intake beyond just using a generic macro calculator is to actually track your consumption for a couple weeks, figure out what food you're consuming, what that calorie intake actually is, if your weight is holding stable, and then kind of make that your individualized maintenance intake, and then start from there and then make gradual adjustments on a week-by-week basis going forward. That's going to be so much more sustainable. You'll actually reach the goal, and you're not going to hate yourself throughout the process. So that'd be my recommendation there. I appreciate the question. You requested some, let me see here, some milk and cookies keto bricks. So I'm going to send some of those your way. For anybody that doesn't know how these AMA videos work, if you submit me a well-thought-out question via the link in the description below and I use your question, I will send you some free keto bricks with a flavor of your choosing. Appreciate y'all. Talk to you next time.